Have you ever heard the tale of Dr. Charles Manley? He wasn't your typical scientist. No, he learned from the very best, perhaps the very worst. His mentor was none other than Dr. Victor Frankenstein, a name whispered in hushed tones in every medical hall and forbidden laboratory. But where Frankenstein sought to create a single life from death, Manley's ambition was far grander. He didn't just want a creature. He wanted a community, an entire society reborn from the grave. After Frankenstein's mysterious disappearance, Dr. Manley vanished from the public eye. He spent years in silence, planning, waiting. Then, one stormy autumn night, he purchased a forgotten town nestled deep in the Carpathian Mountains. The place was called Raven's Hollow, a name that seemed to carry the chill of the grave itself. It was a town swallowed by mist, its streets cracked and broken, its windows boarded up tight. Its most prominent feature, a cemetery that stretched for miles. The villagers from neighboring towns wouldn't go near it. They said the very ground seemed to breathe with a sinister life of its own. But for Manley, it was perfect. He set up his new laboratory in the basement of the old mayor's mansion. It was a scene straight out of a nightmare. Tables lined with cold metal clamps, vats bubbling with strange preserving fluids, and massive copper coils that hummed with a constant, eager electricity. By night, he would venture into the sprawling graveyard, armed with only a lantern and a shovel. By dawn, he would return with his subjects. He began his work with a single body, then 2. Soon, he had 10. Each creation was an improvement on the last stitched together with surgical precision, fused by the raw power of lightning, and bound by a dark marriage of blood and science. But Manley wasn't just building monsters. He was building a town. Weeks melted into months, and then, one by one, his creations began to stir. They awoke. A man with the scarred face of a soldier stood stiffly and offered a salute. A woman, her heart cavity empty, began to hum a haunting, ancient lullaby. A small child, pale and broken, looked up at Manley and whispered a single word: "Father." Soon, the desolate streets of Raven's Hollow were stirring with unnatural life. Dr. Manley stood proudly on the steps of the old church, his coat flapping in the relentless wind, and he made his grand declaration: "Rise, my children, a new society shall begin here. A place where the dead may walk, speak, and live again." And for a time, they did. The resurrected obeyed their Creator. They rebuilt their homes, swept the cobblestone streets, and even rang the old church bell, its sound echoing across the dead valley. It was a grotesque unbelievable miracle. But perfection is fleeting, especially when built on such unholy foundations. Something began to change within his creations. Fragments of their past lives, memories they should not have possessed, started to surface. The soldier caught his reflection in a shard of glass and screamed in pure horror at the monstrous face staring back. The woman who hummed lullabies found her husband's grave and tore at the earth, wailing for a body that would never rise to join her. The carefully stitched seams of their new society began to unravel. They turned on each other. Their stitches tore open, and their limbs began to rot faster than Manly could ever hope to repair them. A deep despair settled over Raven's Hollow. Some begged for the sweet release of a final death, while others, filled with a burning rage, began to crave vengeance. Dr. Manly tried to calm the rising chaos, to remind them of the gift he had given them. But the dead no longer listened. They no longer saw him as their creator. They saw him as their curse. The end began on the third night of a furious storm. The creatures gathered outside his mansion, hundreds of them, their eyes glowing like dying coals in the darkness. The church bell tolled without end, rung by hands that trembled not with fear, but with an unholy rage. Manly stood at his window, the flashes of lightning illuminating his pale face. As his creations, his children, completely surrounded the house. "You owe us life," they screamed, their voices a cacophony of pain. "You gave us only pain." The first stone shattered a window. Then the mob surged forward. They tore down the iron gates, smashed through the heavy oak doors, and clawed at the very walls of the mansion. Manly fled to his laboratory in a panic, pulling levers, trying to harness the storm's energy. Blue arcs of lightning danced wildly across the room. "I made you," he cried out in desperation. "I gave you existence." The roar that came back from the mob was their final, chilling reply. "And we give it back." The generator exploded. The massive surge of power set the mansion ablaze. Fire, hungry and relentless, leaped from house to house, from corpse to corpse, until the entire town of Raven's Hollow was burning. By morning, all that remained was ash and a profound, echoing silence. The people from the nearby towns said the smoke rose for 3 days strata foul, greenish haze, as if the earth itself was spitting out something that never should have been. Villagers from neighboring towns searched the ruins and found no survivors. All that was left were fragments of bodies fused together in the ruins. But they did find one last baffling mystery. A stone monument stood in the center of the graveyard, seemingly carved overnight. Burned into its surface were the words, "Here lies Dr. Manly, and the town that never should have lived." Some say, to this day, that when the fog rolls thick and heavy across the valley, you can still hear them, the whispers of the dead, forever arguing in the dark, phantom streets of Raven's Hollow. The tragic legacy of a man who wanted to play God and ended up eternally trapped among his own monstrous creations. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this dark tale, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss another story from the shadows. See you next time.